Awesome. Shaye, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Can I get you to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and how you've come to be the amazing Shaye sitting in front of me today?
Oh my goodness. So my name's Shaye Thyer. I'm the CEO and founder of Pallas. Pallas is an expert financial consultancy for women in business. How did I get here? Goodness gracious. How long have we got, Chad?
Go for it.
It's certainly been a journey. Probably the last 2 years have been some of the most stressful slash exciting slash empowering um, months of my life. I think I feel like I've reached a point in life and career and all the things where I feel empowered to bring my passion together with my craft, and that's
Oh, I
been
love
like
that.
my favorite thing to do and figure out. It's like not as easy and like sexy and cool as it sounds though. It's certainly been a remembering of skill set, a constant iteration of the way things are done. But today I'm very pleased to say that despite the things that are difficult and challenging and the roadblocks that come, even though I know they're coming because I know all the theory and all the things, every night, literally every night, I go to bed feeling incredibly satisfied about the impact that I've had during the day or that I'm building. And that is the most important thing for me at the moment. My soul needs it so bad.
Can we kind of muse on, meditate on that point for a moment? How many people do you think go to bed at night really satisfied with the impact that they made? How many people do you think are actually thinking about their work in terms of impact at
I
all?
think more than those that used to. I certainly
Mm,
know that, and I'm going to sound like a total granny now, the younger generation is more wired that way.
mm,
I'm learning that really, really quickly. I don't have a team of young people myself, but my colleagues that are in practice or running their businesses and looking at hiring are really being challenged by this group of people that they don't recognize and don't understand that well. But the thing I
mm.
love about even my daughters, who are very, very young and getting very excited about their first paid jobs and things like that, they want to make a difference. And I love that. I just like, honestly, I feel like I've spent a lot of my life on a hamster wheel of someone else's
Mm.
benefit. And yeah, I mean, so the answer to your question is I think a lot more than used to be, or certainly maybe it's because I'm noticing it. I'm not sure because I'm in that space.
Yeah, sure.
That said, I still think there is too much. Oh my gosh, look at me having a wardrobe malfunction. I
I
still
can have
think,
one too if it makes you feel better.
yeah, I still think that, I mean, I'm still very challenged by a, what's the correct word? A very short term focus, a very only money focus,
Mm,
it's not about just a commercial focus because realistically we need to eat, we need to live,
mm,
and we need money to do those things, but very myopic view of the world, which is like
hmm.
kill or be killed,
Yeah.
and just be brutal.
Mm. Have you
Mm,
always been driven by purpose and making a difference? Is this true of Shaye at 15 and at 20 and at 25 as well?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So when I was a teenager, I identified as a lawyer because I wanted to be a lawyer.
That's so cool.
And like then, so my dad and I used to spend many a night watching, Law and Order of all the iterations. And then The Good Wife came out, and I was like, this is amazing, and all the things. And when I went to uni, I started a double degree and did really poorly at my law subjects. And like
Hmm.
upon reflection, there was a bit going on at that stage. So I was like early
Sure.
20s, had a really rubbish boyfriend, moved into state by myself. Like there was a
Hmm.
bit going on. So maybe I wasn't bad at it. I just didn't show up that well. But
I imagine the challenges were stacked against you,
well,
as
yeah,
we have discovered in most industries.
right. So I think, and even when I started my first accounting role, I got annoyed quickly because I wondered where the helping was. Like I was
Mm,
like, oh, so I'm just like photocopying stuff and putting paper together and putting numbers in a box. When do I get to help people? So
mm,
I think the answer is yes. It's always been in there, and I've enjoyed finding ways in these various kind of quite clinical on paper, some of the roles that I've had, moving businesses forward, reducing friction, helping people enjoy what they do more, helping those businesses have better outcomes and better impact if they can. Not all of them like to come along the impact journey, but each to their own. So I think it's always been in there, Chad.
Isn't it funny the kill or be killed money mindset that you're mentioning before? We know that money is necessary to sustain so many parts of our world, and it is this kind of necessary evil, necessary good, depending on how you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to talk about impact and making change, it's hard to decouple them, the money and the impact. So much of impact can be made through money, whether that's fundraising or funding a project or funding people, or education, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
How do you wrestle with the idea of, I want to make the biggest impact I possibly can in the different spaces, and maybe you can speak to the spaces that you're looking to make an impact in as well. But I'm challenged by this money idea.
Yeah, so I'm not a purist. I don't know what the right phrase is, but like I absolutely understand that like if I don't make money in my business, I can't help any other women. That's the
Mm,
first thing. And so in the approach to building Pallas, I've had to be quite brutal in having a high ticket price and all of those kind of things. Because if I never build that engine, I'll never be able to reach the other women that I want to work with that are
mm,
potentially not within that ideal client profile. So in my space, I know that in Australia, we've got a market of 700,000 women owned and led businesses. That seems like plenty of market for me. Nice. But what we also know is that a more significant proportion of those businesses are on the smaller side
mm,
compared to our blokes that run businesses. So for someone like me that comes in, even at a fractional kind of CFO level, which in itself is very scalable and accessible for lots of businesses who can't afford a whole CFO full time, there's then the next kind of click down of women that run their businesses that are not at the size and scale where they
mm.
can invest a lot in these things, but they still want to learn and they still need things and guidance so that they can get to that next level. I've completely forgotten your question.
Oh, good. Yeah, how do we wrestle with the idea of, we want to make the biggest impact as possible,
Yeah.
but also, I guess what you're kind of saying is, it's it's a struggle to want to help people, but then realize you need to charge people to help people because you need to make money. I almost feel like the perfect situation would be charge other people so you can help people over here. How do we
Yep.
charge the people who won't necessarily receive the end product that you're creating?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that's certainly a thing that I have thought about. Many a piece of feedback that says, "Look, you could just niche in women on the front, Shay, but have the men pay the bills." Like, lol, um, and that's certainly a thing. I think is a bit of a mindset shift as well. I think one of the
Mm,
things I enjoy doing with my clients is helping them through this challenge that I've worked through. So, yes, you want to have this amazing impact on a cohort of humans in the world, but you literally can't do that unless you are running a commercial business that makes
mm,
money. And so, in working through what that wrestle looks like, it's like shifting your mind from, oh my God, in selling a thing that I do, taking from you and I'm not having
mm,
the impact, when in fact, me offering my service that, yes, there's going to be a transaction of money involved, is actually doing is actually doing that person's service that I want to have the impact of. And that's
mm,
it's just a mindset shift. And I've always struggled with that. I've grown up as an accountant. We don't like talking about the value that we add and selling and asking for
mm,
money and those kind of things. We're not traditionally very good at that. But by reframing and saying, well, if I don't offer this person my package that
mm,
costs blah, they will never probably, possibly miss this opportunity to move past this hard place that they're at and have the impact they want.
mm. And
And so,
I know that uh, that is doubled down by the mere fact that you are a woman and your services are for women.
mhm,
There is this innate hesitation to ask for anything, the want to be of service.
mhm,
If you were to be working in another industry where you were serving a different cohort of people, perhaps you wouldn't have, and you're a different person, perhaps you wouldn't have some of those hesitations. But it's interesting to meditate on the idea that, like, because the area that you've chosen to work in it is challenging you to work in the area that you want to work in.
Yeah, 100%. I had a really interesting conversation with a colleague last week, and one of the reasons why I just adore him as a human is he is so direct. He is
Mm.
like, boom, here is my answer, but he's not an a-hole at the same time.
Yeah, cool, great.
And he's in the startup space, and I, that kind of, fundraising space and startup land is not, my specialty. And so I'm asking him all these questions. And because I'm always challenged by this idea that women in business can't get funded.
Mm.
And I'm like, it's wrong, it's sexist, blah, 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 blah. And to be honest, that's been a pretty, I haven't approached my sharing of my views with
Mm.
all of the information and all of the education that I could have. So I appreciate this conversation that we had last week. So essentially what he's saying is in VC land, generally, one of the two things to fund more women, essentially, there's going to be 99 bloke-led businesses that show up asking for money, and there's going to be one woman. So getting to those women is hard in the first place. The second thing is women generally present with a business model that wants to fix something in the world, which we love, and that's why I'm in the space I am.
Mm.
But at the same time, it often comes at the trade-off of the commercials, and all VCs care about is the commercials, right?
Mm.
And so it was like a real penny drop moment for me in that is a problem that I need to think about later and maybe contribute to solving. Not my area of expertise today, but now
Yeah.
makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as there's sexism in the pitch meetings, although I know that there is, and that we won't even go into that. But this
Oh,
idea
we
that
can. I'm here for it.
how long have we got, right?
Days.
But
This will be a long podcast.
yeah, but when it exactly to your question, right? What I find myself working with my clients on a lot, and what I love helping them through, is you can do both. You
Mm.
can have massive impact and a very commercial
Mm.
engine delivering that, and they don't necessarily have to trade off. In fact, if you're too much eyes on the impact and not enough on the commercials, you
Mm.
won't get to the one that you want. And
Mm.
I love working through that because it's exactly what I've been doing for years in working out how do I get to this moment. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. It's almost the stoic principle of the obstacle is the way. If I want to make the biggest impact I want to make, I need to make the most finances I need to make this possible.
Mm.
Therefore, how do I make my venture as financially sound as possible? And so you could say by being overly impactful, you could be so commercially viable, but there's a balancing act, and that sounds like a big ask of an individual to make. So, Shaye, how do you go from being a passionate, future-minded, let's make some change, working in smaller accountancy firms or in smaller roles, to now having a career that you've had quite a few leadership roles, and now you obviously have Pallas. What's the transition? What's the is it just turning up every day and doing your work, or is there a journey that you go on to get to this point now?
So I think I was always seeking greater impact in the roles that I had, like looking through the lens of like what I was actually there functionally to do. So
Mm.
when I finished at a large firm 2019, I think, I was fortunate enough to be in a national role where I had really profound impact on almost every accountant in that business, the
Mm-hmm.
business itself, and then by virtue of that, their thousands of clients. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
really proud of that. And at that moment was a bit of crossroad for me. And oh, I could break this off into a consultancy and go and help other firms, or I could work within one firm and do a thing, but it wasn't enough. And so I
Mm-hmm.
moved across into tech thinking, okay, cool. If I can be someone within a tech business that has accountants and bookkeepers as customers,
Mm.
and I can show up in a really credible and authentic way, and they know that I know them and we are the same people,
Mm.
then potentially I can have much broader impact, and I can
Mm.
get through to more accountants and help them do more amazing stuff with their clients. And, that ripple effect would get wider. I think in theory that was correct. And certainly, I had the opportunity to learn so much moving out of practice into different roles, more, yes, sales and go to market focus. Like it was a real kind of crash course in that
Mm.
side of things because we don't learn that stuff as accountants. That said, when I got to the point where I was really kind of deep in the belly of an enormous corporate, there is just so much disconnect between the
Yeah.
tasks that I was doing every day, that I see my colleagues doing every day, and the thing on the wall, and the thing that what we tell Wall Street, and all the things that we apparently exist to do, and
Mm.
the impact essentially. And so I was side hustling in the things that fed my soul. So I was side hustling in places where I could have an impact. So I was leading the National Women's Network, and I was, coordinating really impactful events as a side hustle. And look, I was already doing a bazillion hours. Like, it was just exhausting.
Because you weren't busy enough, right?
Right. And having two tween girls is not like its own full time job.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
God.
And so, the transition for me was really, this is not sustainable. This is your third round of
Mm.
burnout, Shay. And as much as you can point at your toxic boss from that firm, or you can point to the ridiculous targets that someone in America sets that's, like this, and has nothing to do with the market here or people or impact or values or anything. Actually, it was me burning myself out, and my ambition and my push, and the fact that I wasn't prioritizing my greatest impact
Mm.
activities. And so what that meant was choosing a very deliberate path to bring the two things together. So
Mm.
what can I offer the world in a way that will help me feel impactful? To whom do I want to offer that? And just do that. I know it sounds really simple, but sometimes it takes a bit of things breaking,
Mm.
really kind of look at things through a bit more simpler lens.
You seem to be very introspective about your role or your uh, capacity to move and make change, because the two different areas you've spoken about, funding and also in workplaces, you've mentioned, oh, what am I doing here to do something to make a change? Where in the funding world, yes, there might not have been active sexism in the room, but that is structural sexism in the room that is making those things so. And in these places where you have bosses upon bosses upon bosses that are all a particular type of person or particular type of structure, it's interesting that you still go, cool, what can Shaye do to make a change or make an impact and perhaps move out of this? Have you always felt the pressure to do it yourself or to make that change, or have you kind of tried to break things from the inside? Is that your tact at all?
I think so. I think it probably doesn't come from a super healthy place. Like, I think growing up, and my mum is a fantastic woman. She's amazing, and I'm really fortunate to have been really close to her, moving through some hard things in like this stage of her life, if that makes
Mm.
sense. But she role modeled to me that you don't rest, you do everything yourself, you suck it up, you're not sore, you're not tired, you're not this, and you've just got to get in and get it done. Like, I like a lot of those things about me. Like, I will literally knuckle down and, like, I am a GSD person. Like, I just get it done.
Mm.
But it has absolutely pushed me into burnout many, many times, as I mentioned.
Mm.
And yeah, I think, and it's not about being overly ambitious, but potentially a little bit naive about how to have the right level of influence to get the change that I wanted. So I certainly learned within that big firm that I
Mm.
worked that, yes, I was impactful, I was influential. However, had I kind of rallied the right voices to send the message that I was trying to send, that it might have had an even greater impact. But that would have
Mm.
been acknowledging the sexism and all the things that are just inherent in some of these businesses, which I was just vehemently wanted to set on fire. So it was all a
Yeah.
learning,
Isn't
right?
that interesting? I'm so challenged by the idea of impact, not because I don't want to make it, but because I want to make it so much that
Yeah.
that there is always a battle in my mind of like, do you want to make the biggest impact or do you want to be recognized for the impact?
Mm.
And depending on what circle you're in or what impact you're making, actually the recognition can outsize the impact. So, for example, you making a change versus you rallying the right voices to make the change. Yes, that change initially happens, and that's great. And oh, wow, you've done a good job being like a leader in that. But you getting the recognition could actually flip the script and go, oh, well, Shaye did it though. And that's more of an impact than the thing you're trying to do at the time anyway.
It's tricky, and like, so it's, for me, it's never been about like what awards can I apply for and all of that, and
Mm,
that's not throwing shade on anyone that does it. Amazing for brand, please do it, especially if you're a woman in business. Please
mm,
apply, please do the things. That said, there's two things. So I got to a point where I was really invested in shifting big systems,
mm,
and it's hard, and I'm not a quitter. However, I definitely did get to the point where I thought about what is actually best use of my time
mm,
during the day, during the week, on the earth, and all the things. I don't think that what I can do with the rest of my life is going to materially impact things like gender pay parity, all of the things. The things I know I can impact is how confidently my girls show up in the world, how much they know about what they're going to face, and having the tools to actually face that in a way that hopefully they won't come off as second best as I did or any of my colleagues did, but also that, it's less about making big systemic change. For me, it's about those individual conversations that I now get to have with the women that I work with. And that might only end up being 100, 200 in the time that I run this business. But that to me is more important than the big blah about, oh, look, you've changed the world. Because I actually don't think I can do that. It's not, I'm not lacking belief. I'm just saying by myself, I don't think I can. And so this is the way that I think I can kind of inject as much of what I think I'm here to do,
mm,
if that's a concept. The challenge with that is, especially in the women's space, is if no one sees me doing this stuff, no one is inspired to do it themselves. And
mm-hmm,
so pushing out the front deliberately takes a lot of energy for me because I don't care whether anyone else can see it. I genuinely could not
yeah,
give it, I don't care. But if no other women see it, then that's a missed opportunity for them to develop the
mm,
confidence, for them to say, hey, she's kind of like me, maybe I could do that. Or actually, that sounds totally doable. Maybe I could do a thing. Or
mm,
you've moved through that. I can too. And it's all about that whole concept of you can't be what you can't see, right? And so that is definitely a conflict in me because I'm not a natural front person. I've had to push into that space. I'm very introverted. Don't laugh. It's actually true. If you ever catch me at a big conference, you're like, I'm having a little, mini stroke over here because
mm.
I can't handle the overstimulation.
I'm the same. I thought I was an extrovert just because I did lots of things like play in a band and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But since COVID, I've like, wait, maybe I'm an introvert. Maybe, or like, I can host a thing, but I don't like attending a thing. I find that really hard.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And like I am at home too much and I know that's
Mm.
not good for me or my business. And these occasional days like where I go to a conference for a whole day, I have the best day and I'm like super cheerleadery. I'm like da 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 all
Mm.
the things. And then I'm like dead for 2 days.
Yeah, gosh, energy's that.
Yeah.
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 So, okay, this is a really interesting direction to approach this from. A reluctant personal brand is such a fascinating angle and such a I think a reality for a lot of people in 2024. If you want to make some kind of impact, whether that is a social, political impact or just a financial impact on your bottom line, you kind of need to put your face out in the world as a product itself. Where do you begin? When did Shaye decide, okay, I'm going to start speaking up, doing these things, or were you already doing that before you left your previous business?
No.
No, okay, so this is fresh. We
Well,
go, I'm
no.
out of here.
Yeah, no, I was doing it before. Like, okay, so it all kind of started at probably maybe 2016. So I was within this huge national firm, doing a bunch of stuff, working really hard, not sleeping, blah, 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 all the things. And I went to this massive conference and I felt like, wow, like I was the fangirling over everyone. And I felt invisible because I had never actually really engaged with the industry that much, and I hadn't worked in a big brand or anything like that. And I squished up next to these other people at a table with my lunch, and I was like, oh, and they're like, yeah, yeah, join us. And they were total strangers. And it was Sharon McClafferty, and I always remember this, and I don't know if she remembers it, but we were just chatting, and she said, you're Shaye, you're from Blah Firm. And I was like, yep, cool. She knows who I
Oh,
am.
that's great.
And she said, mate, you need to tell more people about what you're doing. What you're doing is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And she gave me this big rev up. And I thought, oh, A, how do you even know that? And B, thanks. And that was literally that was the thing that kind of made me start. And I remember the first LinkedIn article I wrote, it took me 4 weeks. And this is like pre-chat GPT where I can,
Yeah,
just dump
actually
my thoughts
writing.
in. Yeah, yeah, actual writing. And it was really controversial because I was essentially sitting in a role in a firm saying, this is why everyone wants to leave your firm. Because anyway,
Great. Okay.
and I was like, and my boss like tore strips. Like he went nuts. But
Wow. Wait, what about their firm or just firms in general?
no,
Okay.
conceptually, firms and
Okay.
this is thought leadership.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, so that's
Not a
how I
corporate
started.
takedown, not just like,
No,
oh
no,
my
no.
God, I hate you so much, Bob.
No, of course
Yeah,
not. Like
cool.
I needed my salary also.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it was so interesting. And then from there, like I just had to I just had to be deliberate about practicing that. So it was not natural. I had lots of thoughts, lots of ideas, can write underwater, whatever that phrase is.
I love that. That's cool.
Yeah, but it really wasn't, unless Shaz had encouraged me that day, I'd never have done it.
Greater women.
Oh,
Women
no.
encouraging women is just one of the greatest things to witness because it is so authentic and
Yeah,
so enthusiastic and so like not of yourself. It's like this, I have nothing to gain here by building you up. I just need to build
yeah,
you up. That's so wonderful.
100%.
I am really intrigued by the notion of being deliberate in the practice of turning up for those things. What does that mean in the literal sense? What are you doing? Are you writing? Are you doing podcasts? Are you doing social media? What is the actual thing you're turning up and doing? And then what does your practice look like?
So now what it looks like is I literally have a diary note every Friday, and I put time aside to think about things that I think are useful for my audience, to dump down a bunch of thoughts, and now bless ChatGPT helps me make them pretty, but to get that stuff down and actually write about it. I post twice a week. I know all the marketers are going, that's not enough, but look, I'm doing it.
Consistency is better than turning up and busting
Haphazardly.
yourself.
So my goal and what I'm doing at the moment is a bit more short form on a Tuesday on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much just on LinkedIn at the moment, which needs to shift, but I'm learning. And it might be kind of ranty. It might be, this is a thing that happened with a client last week and it, these are my thoughts. And then a bit more long form on a Wednesday, which is more thought leadership-y. Like, for example, we were just talking about perfectionism earlier, and it like genuinely comes up in conversations with my clients all the time. It's something we work through, consistently. Consistently, we need to work through how might we, and also get it done. Don't worry about it being perfect. Just launch, that kind of idea. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. One of the hardest things for me is putting a picture of myself on the internet. And it sounds so daft, and I love your posts for that. I love seeing chat.
Oh, really? Can I say I literally saw your post yesterday or the day
Yeah.
before, and I was inspired to write my own post. And I was like, okay, I need a post and I need a photo. And I looked at your photo. I was like, damn, I just like I'm not I'm not that confident. I want to put a photo up, so I've trained on my face so I can just invent photos of myself.
So so good. Like, you've got so much character in your face, Chad. Like,
Oh, do I? Thank you.
you do. I love your posts with your head on it. But like, that's so ick to me. I'm like,
Same.
but it apparently the algorithm likes it, and that's what someone told me would be useful.
It's
So
so refreshing to hear that you are still doing it, although you feel ick the whole way through it.
it's
So
so
I have
gross.
to ask, does it do anything? Like, that's the big question of like, okay, like I'm doing this thing I'm uncomfortable with, is
Yeah.
putting myself out there. I'm also taking a photo and publishing it on the internet. I also don't feel comfortable about that. I have to like, there's so many barriers you're getting across, mental barriers just to hit post. Do you get anything in return? Does it work? Like, what is happening to make you go, okay, turn up again next week?
It definitely works. And like, in theory, I know my customer so well because I am actually her, right?
Mm,
I love, like, I will stop scrolling if I see a picture of a woman and a post.
yeah.
And even the guys that do it as well. Like, if I see a person taking an authentic shot of themselves, and you shouldn't have told me they use AI, but that's okay. I won't
No,
judge you.
I've done it twice. The rest are real.
I literally stop. And it's like, if I'm stopping, then I reckon my audience will be stopping too. And so these two things together, the ick and worrying about it being perfect, I do
Mm.
not have time to manufacture ring light and getting the lighting perfect and all the things. And I just don't have the tolerance for that.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, if I'm just out and about, I might be waiting to pick the kids up from school and I happen to have parked in a place where the sun's coming through my window kind of nice.
Great.
I'll go snap, 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 cool,
Yeah.
done, and just
Yeah.
just move past it.
Yeah.
But also, I talk to my girls a lot about moving through hard things. So
Hmm.
not that we want to go into all the parenting things, but the kids these days have got so little friction and frustration in their lives. Like,
Mm.
I want to watch a show, I'll just scroll, 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 pick it. I used to have to ask dad to take me to the video shop, pick out a VCR, and then I find the one I want and it's not there, and then we go home and did it anyway. So I talk to them all the time about, I know you don't want to do this thing and it feels really hard, but when you've moved to the other side of that hard thing and you've done it,
Mm.
it's so satisfying and like it gets addictive, right? I'm not
It's
quite at the
almost a predecessor to feeling good. Like I forget
100%.
that like feeling good is almost because you had to do something to earn the feeling.
Absolutely. It doesn't feel as good if it just lands on you. Like, unless it's
Mm.
like $1 billion and you never have to work again. But
I'd take
where
the
does that going to
bazillion
happen?
dollars. I'd be happy with that.
But right, like, so, and I feel like if I can do this hard thing that gives me the ick every Friday and I
Mm.
line that up, then next week, something else that I find hard is not going to be as hard, or I'm going to react better to it. And incrementally, because this is kind of new space. I've never run my own business before.
Mm.
I've run other people's businesses. I've grown other people's businesses. I know all the things. I've worked through all the challenges, but not for me. It's never been my bank account. It's never been my time. It's never been
Mm.
my brand. So I think it's really important.
It's interesting. I find I have this conversation a lot of it's so easy to do for somebody else. Of like, oh,
Yeah.
of course I'll do that for you. Like that's
Yeah.
so easy. Of course I know the way forward because yeah, you post on Tuesday and Wednesday and do that thing, and of course you batch your content. But for me, are you kidding? Batch content? What do I have to say? Why am I so important? Why am I? What value do I have to share?
Mm,
It's interesting how much we doubt our value when our face is attached to it versus somebody else's.
100%. And that is true for many, 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 many humans. Seems to be even more profound in my space. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's there's so many limiting beliefs that we hold as people, but
Mm.
women especially, because we have a society that tells us a bunch of stuff about ourselves that we have gotten to the point where we believe it to be true when it's actually bullshit.
Mm.
And it gets in our way all the time. Like, my one of my most favorite colleagues ever, I love her to bits. We work through hard things together all the time and have these beautiful, profound conversations. And she just stopped me. She said, I just have to tell you, I love you. You are a beautiful human. You are all the beautiful things. This thing
Hmm.
about you not liking the way you look is in your way. I just need you to know this from me. And I'm like, all the things. And like
I'm
my
emotional
husband,
about it. That's beautiful.
oh, she's just, and I always am so grateful that I met her and that she's in my life because she's an amazing person. But it seems so shallow. Like we're literally talking about this, right? Like just show up and get it done. What do you worry about it so much? But it's been ingrained in me as I've
Mm,
grown up, and I'm not alone in this. I know. I remember having a conversation with my mum when I was probably 12, and she like made a bowl of watermelon when we were having sandwiches for lunch. I was
mm,
like, "What's up?" And she's like, oh, I've got to keep your father happy. And it's like these things that land in your
mm,
head that become limiting beliefs for your
mm.
whole life. If you don't kind of show up and front them, they'll stay there. And
It's
like,
so
I'm not saying it.
challenging to decouple. That's like an experience that you've had, a personal experience with your mum, right? Like, but that is also inherited from somebody else, somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else, somebody else.
Mm.
There are whole industries spending billions and billions of dollars to make you feel bad about the way you look,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so I don't get to turn up and like take a photo of myself and feel good about myself. Like, or like take a photo with my kids or with my colleagues that I adore. I don't want to jump in the staff photo because I didn't wear the right thing today. It's like, wait, this is a celebration. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so many things working against that. And so this whole idea of a personal brand and turning up and putting your face in the world, it it yeah, the ick feeling isn't your ick. You know what I mean? You've inherited
Mm.
that ick. And that's so
Absolutely.
unfortunate.
Yeah. And if you remember this, when you helped me create Pallas as a brand, I literally was I don't know what the right word is. I was so stuck in
Mm,
moving forward in my business because I couldn't get past this idea of me being at the front of it and the brand being me, which is dumb because it already was. And I know I look back, oh, it already was Shaye, like relax. But it was a huge blocker for me, and I needed your help to put another name on it. So it wasn't the Shaye Show. Actually,
mm.
now that I say that out loud, I know where that's come from. One of my bosses used to say, it's not the Shaye Show. And I'm like, you
Wow.
never made it the Shay Show. Oh, sorry, you wanted to be the Matt Show. I see what's going on here.
Shout out, Matt.
Yeah. Oh gosh, you'll know. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, and look, I think that was important. I think I want to run a business, not a. I don't want to be a practitioner. What's that? I don't just want to run a consultancy. I want to run a business. So at a
Yeah.
point in time, it's not always going to be me at the front. There's going to be other people doing other things, and that's really important for scale
Mm,
and reach and impact. So it was still the right decision. But the real reason that I asked for your help is because I couldn't move past it being the Shay Show. It
mm,
was so ick for me.
yeah. So you've done other activities when it comes to personal branding. You've spoken on podcasts. You have your own podcast. You've spoken on stage and all these different areas. Obviously, that's putting yourself out there. How do you approach those things versus writing something on LinkedIn and posting a photo? How do you turn up to those feeling, I guess, confident or just empowered to deliver a message?
I really enjoy podcasts. I think it's
Mm,
because it's conversational, it's interactive. I don't have to like prepare a thing. We can, I also know it's mostly, sometimes it's edited. So if I do something dumb, then we'll be okay. Public speaking is still a huge space of anxiety for me. Honestly, I bricks for weeks. Like it is so, but I also really enjoy it because again, on the other side of it, I get
mm,
all of this rush of dopamine. I'm like, wow, look at this thing. Even if it wasn't like spot on,
mm,
I would love more skills in prepping and delivering. I would love that. I'm
mm,
still very self-conscious about forgetting my lines, which is not the
sure.
point. It's,
Mm.
yeah, and I know this stuff in theory, but I find that really difficult. But I'm doing a whole bunch of learning, investing a lot in understanding more about how I can better leverage speaking opportunities to bring people into Pallas to reach more and to
That's great.
share.
Can you tell us about that? That's really interesting. How do you leverage a speaking engagement or something to bring people in?
Yeah, I think so. What I'm learning about is I've got so many stories and so many things that have led me to this point and all the things, but we don't have 5 hours to talk about it. So being really conscious of who my audience is, what they're going to get value from, and how I make that interesting is what I'm learning how to do. So this idea that, let's just say, it's a speaking engagement where I actually, what's in it for me is probably getting some leads out of it, right? So
Mm,
reaching some people that I can engage with and potentially help.
mm,
So I need them to get a few things out of my talk. I need them to get out of it that I know what I'm doing, that I'm credible, that I'm a good person, being leaning into some vulnerability and sharing some things that
mm,
are a little bit ick, not because it's about me, but because they might hear their own story in what I'm sharing.
mm,
And I guess articulate some hope as well. So, potentially if some of that story is about this hard thing happened, but then this happened and this is where we are now, being deliberate about like how I actually frame that in what I'm sharing. But also, like, fractional CFO is kind of like a very blah term, and lots of people don't know what it is, and they don't care. They just
mhm,
want to know, if we work together, how
mm,
am I going to feel? How am I going to live? What are the outcomes going to be, essentially? So
mm,
framing around that stuff, I'm learning how to do better as well. And it's all about taking this story that is genuine to me, because I have a very clear kind of path of how I've landed here and why I do what I do. Taking that story, practicing sharing that in a constructive way,
mm.
and then leading them through this conversation of, well, where did I get to and how do I help from here, essentially. I don't like the way it's framed. It's kind of like you're selling on the stage, but I don't
Yeah.
approach it that way. Again, mindset shift of, even if it is technically selling,
Mm.
I'm actually offering someone a way past a hard thing, and that is doing them service, and I am in service.
It is so interesting that that is a bit of a common thread with a lot of women, is the idea of selling is somehow dirty, and I don't think it's incorrect. It feels inherently dirty. It's like, I need to convince you of value instead of
Mm.
just displaying value. Isn't it interesting that, like, the format of how you speak and the format of how you deliver a message can change, or maybe alter the way you perceive the value to be, as authentic as it may or may not be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm really intrigued by, you touched on something about vulnerability. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that is so beautiful. I see that as a strength in people, a vulnerability, and that it's almost not a tactic. I dare not call vulnerability a tactic, but it is almost a shortcut to trust, of like, wow, okay, you shared something with yourself, and we almost have this reciprocation bias as an audience to go, okay, let me share something about me, and maybe we can open up, and maybe we are at that level already.
Mm.
Are you thinking that through as you share those things, or is it more of like, I turn up this way always as a vulnerable, honest, authentic person, and so therefore it's going to turn up in this space as well?
I am who I am. I am just me. I'm super authentic, and I've learnt to be okay with that. I was not like that in the start
Mm.
of my career. In fact, one of my most beautiful friends now will tell you, when he worked for me, I was a mole.
I haven't heard mole in 15 years. That's
I know,
great.
right?
I love the word mole.
I know. And it was because I had learnt a way of leading through role
Mm,
modeling. I grew
sure.
up in an accounting firm that was run by who normally run accounting firms, right? So I learnt
Hmm.
this very masculine leadership style, very cutthroat, very commercial, all the things. So you don't have feelings here, and you certainly don't have children.
Mm,
And I thought that to play the game, I need to wear a mask, and that's how I need to show up. And it wasn't until, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2014, I worked with a much smaller firm, and a woman she runs that firm, and super progressive, all the things. And she called me on so much of my bullshit. And I
mm,
really didn't appreciate it at the time. It was a really hard time in my life. But now, and shortly after, I was like, oh, thank you. And she said stuff to me like, I don't even know who this person is in the office. I know you outside of you are not like,
Mm.
why do you show up like this? It's really intimidating. It's this, it's Molly, basically. And so,
So she was witnessing your mask
mm,
and daring you to take it off.
exactly. And it's a like it was certainly a comfort blanket or just a thing that's like, I'm not ready. I don't feel ready to
Mm,
be my whole self at work. And it actually wasn't until I had the girls, like that's a pretty profound shift in a person's life, clearly,
absolutely.
that I was like, I just don't have the energy to show up as someone else. I
Wow.
am this, right? Like
I feel that.
I absolutely am this. And like, yeah, of course I've got feedback about, sometimes your tone is a little bit interesting. Sure, because I might be tired and something will fly out of my mouth. And, I regulate pretty well these days, but you will never get anything than this. Like, this is just literally who I am. So
Mm,
to your point, I am much more comfortable with vulnerability now. I don't have my natural leadership style is very, very just is authentic because I don't do a different way, but
mm,
very empathetic,
mhm,
encouraging others that by role modeling a bit of vulnerability, then, like you said, I kind of invite that safe space and create a psychological safety. And I just think that's just incredibly important. Well, A, because I don't know how to lead another way, like this is just my natural state, but because I just don't feel like people are empowered to show up as themselves all the time. And
mm,
it's so exhausting. It's so exhausting wearing a mask or being or filtering things or not feeling like you can be your authentic self. And I don't want that for
mm.
anybody.
A psychological safety is such a wonderful phrase. I have been working personally outside of this professional sphere in areas where that is such a priority, and it's such a wonderful space to turn up in that it feels very conflicting to turn up in any workspace that doesn't. Like, how did we get to a space where this was not ever the case?
Mm.
How do we? Why is psychological safety at the bottom of the priority list? And I think it really speaks to the value you hold in so many of the areas that you work in. Is that is a priority for you? That's super cool, and I love to witness it in everything that you do.
Thank you.
I love
Yeah,
that.
like I said, I don't know how to do it a different way, but it is, yeah. I reflect on some of the environments that I've worked in, and I've known that they've felt a bit off.
Mm,
And it wasn't until later and like growing up and, moving through your life that I actually reflect and go, that would be almost illegal now with some of the laws that they've brought in.
yeah.
Certainly safe work essays dropped a ripper on us on Christmas Day, but it's so important because for some people like us, it's an absolute no brainer to
Mm,
create psychological safety every day. It is one of the most important things that leaders do in a business. But for others,
mm.
they couldn't care less. They
And
just,
yeah, it's interesting how like psychological safety, it would almost, I can imagine someone listening along could potentially sit as this almost parallel thing to this woke idea, right? I know that that's a hesitation, people have a hesitation to engage in that space, but psychological safety can just be like, what is your reaction when someone gets work to you late, or like what is your, how do you navigate when people don't hit a certain quality and or standard that you expect of them? How do you navigate that space and communicate expectations or check in with people before communicating any kind of disappointment, if that even needs to be communicated? It can turn up in so many different spaces. It's not
mm-hmm.
necessarily political stance. It's because I've heard people say that a psychological safety is like, oh, people are too soft these days. And it's not about soft. It's about allowing people to be their full selves.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can be your full self, you'll probably turn up as your best self.
Yeah.
And isn't that a great thing for a workplace?
Mm-hmm. And
Mm.
immediately go to that place of how is that person that sees psychological safety as woke or soft, how have they grown up? Like, what has been the norm for them? Has it been literally suck it up, move on? Has it
Mm.
been, very detached parenting? Has it been some other thing? And in fact, they probably don't know any different.
Mm.
They don't know what another way of being.
It
And that
almost manifests as like an envy of like, I didn't get it. Why do you get it? It's like,
correct. And that
ooh.
I see that so frequently. I used to rant and rant and rant about it in that big firm because it's like the partners would talk about their frustrations with their team or
Mm.
in my day I didn't get a promotion just for showing up and da, 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 da. So I had to do 80 hours and I was like, did you enjoy doing 80 hours? Did you feel like that got, was that good for you? Do you feel like
Mm.
you showed up at your best? And they go, oh. I was like, so rather than enforcing this, thing of your team moving through the hard things you have to, isn't it your job to move the hard things out of the way? Like, isn't that as a parent and as a leader, taking the things that we've learned to be not great and kind of
Mm.
shift it or share the learnings or whatever? It never made sense to me. I was like, why do you want them to do manual timesheets just because you did? It's stupid. Anyway, there's that tone.
Yeah, that's great. I love what we are talking about just before about formats of like of the format of how you would communicate a message,
Yeah.
and I'm intrigued about what your next thing is on say you're talking about social media. You write a post, you put photos up, but I also see you doing so much work with podcasting and video. And are you looking to like repurpose those things so that you don't have to write a new post every day? And like,
Yeah.
what is your content strategy for Q4 2025 look like, or is it just turn up?
I think setting the bar reasonably low at just turn up on a Friday is
Hmm.
important because I can definitely achieve that. My risk is I'm going to write a laundry list of stuff and do zero of it. But yes, so repurposing stuff from podcast I love because like my head's already on the screen, right? Let's just
Mm.
chop it up and make something out of it. From time to time, I say things that are useful, so why not share those? My barrier at the moment is like just getting it done. So
Mm.
I'm in the market for a VA, and I would love that person to help me with this stuff because I can do it, but it takes me a long time, and I am a little bit short of hours. So that's definitely something that's on the list.
Mm.
And like revisiting some things that we talked about always inspires me to think of other stuff. Like it's I would like to have on my list not to try not to have these wicked thoughts on a weekend because I find honestly, I find myself just getting inspiration from the most random places. Like a couple of weeks ago, I posted about a conversation that Taya and I had in the kitchen. And thank God I had ChatGPT on voice to like dump my thoughts into because it would have been gone. And it was actually quite good. I thought it was pretty good anyway. So there's that. But I think repurposing stuff is actually, if you're a time poor and or you're just getting started or you're like, oh my God, the idea of creating stuff is just so repurpose a bunch of stuff that you've done. Like if you snapped a couple of selfies, as long as potentially you're not in a bikini, that would be weird. Use them. Like, who cares? I mean, I talk a big game now because I'm feeling a bit more confident, but
Great.
like, use what you've got.
Jay, can we pause for 1 second? I'm having these crazy camera issues.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's glitching out like crazy.
Yeah, it's glitching over here.
Yeah, give me 1 second to sort this out so that
Mhm.
because it is a video podcast as well. I want to make sure that we're both sorted off like twice in an interview, but it never glitches. So I'm intrigued by what's happening.
Oh,
Okay, this looks better.
yeah.
Let's try for this.
Okay.
Great. And see. I like what you say about that you're feeling a little bit more confident, that just the act of talking about the idea makes you feel better about the idea. It's almost kind of like we were talking about before about the obstacle is the way. It's like, if I just turn up and do the thing, I might feel better about doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes a frustrating, obvious reality of like, I know this to be true. I know that doing the content, writing the content, turning up, I know it's going to work, and it's frustrating that I know it because I don't want to do it.
Yeah. And like the thing that's working for me at the moment is do it first. Do the hardest thing first. So
Mm.
Friday mornings, the girls get to school, and the first thing I do is this hard thing of
Mm.
organizing my content for the next couple of weeks because it is hard. Otherwise, I'll be like, oh, let's check my emails and I'll just do this and I'll just do that and I won't do it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. How do you, okay, I have a personal question. So
Sure.
I have a whole host of things that I've written or taken photos of or recorded already that I then stick in drafts and I don't post. Do you have the same? How do you reckon with the creation versus publishing mindset? Or do you just do it instantly? What's your approach to judging the work once you've done it?
I don't have a backlog of stuff at the moment. I used to work like that where I had like 17 things that I'd created and I'll investigate a scheduling tool and see if that works and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. But I actually just don't have much content at the moment. So it's kind of like Friday morning, I might get 1 or 2 weeks out of that
Mm.
exercise and that's it. And I just have to lick the stamp and send it because I haven't got anything else. I don't know if that's very good advice, but
No, I love that. I love that. Also, lick the stamp. What a great way to
oh, my
say that.
husband says it all the time. He's in motorsport. It's like just yeah.
That's I really relate to that because I have everyone says just batch your content and come up with a content calendar, and I'm so challenged by that idea because I do it and then I judge it too harshly because there's too
Yeah.
much time between the posting and the creation that
Mm-hmm.
then I have content going back a year when my hair when I had no hair and now I've got a big ponytail and so like I now can't post that. That's weird. Uh,
Why?
or maybe I can. Exactly. I'm judging it too harshly. And I feel like there would be so many people that have started on this journey a few times and maybe doubted themselves a few times. And I like the idea of just lick the stamp, just
Mm-hmm.
send it off. That's quite
Mm-hmm.
cool.
I think maybe it's a blessing that I haven't done too much batching, as you call it,
Mm.
at the moment because I don't have another option. I either literally schedule send or I've got nothing. Maybe there's something in that. Like, is there apart from I know you like everything to be perfect, is there something else in the way you just literally like what's when we wrap up today, Chad,
Yeah.
and you go to your drafts and you literally get your scheduling tool out, whatever it's called, I don't know,
Mm.
what's in the way of you doing that?
This is a great like Chad content therapy session. I see there's multiple things. For me, it's imposter syndrome. Who am I to say this thing, and why is my experience at all important to other people?
Mm-hmm.
And do people see me as a fraud? There are people I'm connected with, brilliant people. Like everyone I am connected with through business, yourself, all these different people are brilliant. If I say something and people are going, yeah, dude, obviously that's the way. Why are you posting about it? Or that's not how I do it. Maybe Chad is a bit of an idiot. You know, there's this kind of like friction of judgment, and maybe it's just a self judgment. And I hear the voices of people who have critiqued me in the past, ex bosses, ex collaborators, ex clients. Um, oh, and it kind of, I feel that me doing something might validate that they were right, that maybe I wasn't as creative or as thoughtful as I thought I was. So there's a lot of things floating around in my head.
Yeah.
And also, really, one of the biggest ones for me is I have so many things I'm passionate about
Yep.
and want to do.
Yep.
I do marketing and I do design, but I also am personally do a lot of advocacy work and I'm really passionate about a few different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Do people think I am this like bizarre Rubik's cube or like what am I going to get from Chad today kind of content? And is that weird? Like to turn up and say this is why your logo should be better on one day, and the next day is like, hey, you should care about these social issues the other day.
I think I am not qualified to therapize you. However, I'll share something that someone said to me, which helps me
Please.
immensely. So, you know how I was telling you that it took me like 4 weeks to write that LinkedIn article?
Mm.
Like, how arrogant of me to think that the entire world was going to read that,
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah.
And I am not an arrogant person. Like, I am the opposite. So, the point of them sharing that is the whole world's not going to see you post, Chad,
Yeah.
even though you'd love to get amazing reach, and I'm sure you do. Like, actual, they
Mm.
the whole world. And are you a Schitt's Creek fan? Have you seen
I
Schitt's
love
Creek?
Schitt's Creek. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my god! So that car ride where David and Alexis are in the car, and David's going to get his driver's license, and he's so freaking out about what the driving instructor is going to think of him, and she literally says to him, "David, nobody cares. Like literally nobody cares." So like maybe grab that clip and
I
like
love
just
that.
like play it and be like, Chad, I know
Right.
you want everyone to care because I read your stuff and I love it, but nobody cares, Chad.
No, I love that. That's good. One, as a Schitt's Creek fan, I appreciate it. It hits heavier. But yeah, it's so true. It's like there is this ego, and I think it's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's ego is so often inherited, and we almost have spent this lifetime
Yes.
trying to break it off of us,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to burn it to the ground. Because
Mm-hmm.
like, what a bizarre ego that people would care and that much to judge it that much. That's a bizarre thing to think.
I know I wouldn't be too hard on yourself in wrapping it up in ego because you're certainly not arrogant or anything like that. But it's a function of us feeling very exposed because it's a
Mm,
vulnerable space for us.
mm,
And if you're anything like me or my youngest daughter, sometimes vulnerability sits very closely to shame, and we don't like that place. And
mm.
so anything that nudges near it, we get big ick, like big ick. One
Oh,
of the
that's really
thing that's coming
profound.
up
I
for
love
me,
that.
yeah,
I'm gonna tattoo that on my body. That's
yeah.
beautiful.
um, that what's coming up for me is I've been fortunate enough to have strangers and they're women, like to your point earlier, that will just reach out and say, I'm a massive fangirl, or
Mm,
I love your stuff, or blah, blah, blah. And I feel like blokes miss out a bit on that because it's not well, I know men that do it, but that's probably something that we get a bit more of in
mm.
our community of women lifting up other women, of just, hey, love that, you know? And maybe I don't want you to, I would love you to be not feel like you need that external validation, because I think when we are wrapped up in that, that's dangerous and we can't help it. We all
Mm.
care what people think, right? I did say to you last week that I was going to wash my hair and I haven't, and that literally just came up for me. So
Everyone
I
better
do
watch
care.
out because like after this conversation, I'm gonna be ruthless online. My content is gonna go through the roof all because of this
Yes.
conversation. I feel so validated. Shay,
Yes.
I feel like
Do it.
there are so many people who might have similar hesitations, right? Or roadblocks, or just this kind of what's the point of it all?
Mm,
If you had to, you're working with a new client and they care about, they've heard this personal brand thing is potentially something that they want to do. You're working with them to kind of unshackle themselves from their beliefs. What would you do? How would you challenge them in a maybe a bit of a plan, a 30, 60, 90-day plan? What are you doing in the first month? What are you doing in the second month? What are you doing in the third month to start building this personal brand for this person?
so the first 30 days, I would be encouraging them to take a 60-second video of themselves saying something that they think is interesting into their phone, into
Mm.
their camera. Don't post it. Doesn't have to be coherent. Just do the thing, because lots of it is kind of muscle memory.
Oh,
I don't do a lot of video content, but I'd like to. And this has certainly been the advice to me. And I'm already feeling better. Like I'm
mm.
moved past that place in my body where I feel like vomiting when I take a video of myself. So that would be the first task for 30 days. So it's very kind of task driven and muscle memory stuff in the first 30 days. Block time to do the thing. So actually put it in your
Mm.
diary,
Mm.
do the video thing, and then whatever day works for you, the first thing in the morning, you do the hard thing and you write something and you post it. That's it.
Right. Great.
The second month, I would be thinking about, relevant to my audience. What is something that I can share that is a little bit vulnerable? Vulnerable can be professional, personal, blah, 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 but
Mm-hmm.
it's like on brand, right? So it's stuff that's relevant for your audience. It's not like, oh, I don't know, I can't think of an example, but, and it only has to be a few lines, and actually just send it. Lick that stamp and send it
Great.
1 or 2 times a week. Just boom, let it go, let it rip. And it'll be like this to start with.
Yeah.
And then it will feel better. So again, this is like all muscle memory and getting used to working through the hard,
Mm.
like that hard feeling, and
Muscle memory is
enjoying.
such a great insight, Shay. I love that. No one I've spoken to ever on this podcast, or I've had a podcast about personal branding previously, and no one has mentioned muscle memory. That is such a great insight of like, you don't have to do it, but you could do it almost all the way there and just get used to the feeling
Mm-hmm.
of like, this isn't weird. This is normal. I've got something to say. And then what if someone else just accidentally hit send? That's awesome.
Well, you know, once you get to the end of that, potentially you've got some pretty cool content you could use.
Mm.
But if also you put it in the bin, that's okay too.
Wow. I love
And
muscle
then
memory. That's a great point.
probably the back end of that is like, okay, so we're a little bit more confident. We enjoy the feeling on the
Mm.
other side of the hard thing. Got some muscle memory about video, which is apparently really important now. I know I'm getting better at it. Just getting the discipline. Let's bring it together and get the discipline around consistent posting.
Mm.
There's a bunch of stuff in there as well about obviously being clear about who your audience is and who you want to speak to. What are the things they find hard? What are the things they would love to be rid of? And of course, like whatever's in the middle there that if there's a way that you work that can help them with that, of course, that's part of it as well. But doing that work to get really clear on like what is the kind of core thing or the core premise of what you do
Mm.
and how you want to impact the world. So like for us at Pallas, our kind of fundamental core premise is that financial independence is the most effective way to have the choice that we need as women to stay safe and to be happy. And like that took probably a good 2 weeks of kind of iteration to nail down,
Mm.
but I'm a little bit happy with it. It's kind of fresh.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
You do a lot of reading on this topic, and one of my favorite books, and I'll sing it from the rooftops, opportunity that I get to talk about it is a book called Invisible Women. And it's all about the ways that data doesn't represent or misrepresents women in the world. And it talks a lot about how finances and the lack of or the distribution elsewhere of finances severely affects women, but all the other things in life, like a longer lifespan or super or all these different things, maternity leaves and consideration of family, all these different areas affects and then plays an effect on the financial sphere. And I admire the work you do because I know that in like you speak about financial freedom and financial literacy, but I know because of conversations we've had and the content they post that there's so much to unpack in just those 2 or 3 words that it's like, okay, let's have a conversation with your partners and the domestic labor and the mental load and all the different things that come along with those things, because financial literacy isn't just about have you done a budget. And it's so if anyone wants a fantastic book, Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez is phenomenal.
I love that.
I would love to, because I'm such a fan of your work, I'd love to send people to you and honor the work that you do. What is the best way to get in contact with the work of Pallas and you and what you do and connect an audience that wants to connect?
So the easiest way to do that is to follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me. I love making new connections. It's awesome. So just Shaye Thyer, ShayeThyer. You can find our website from there, or you can go direct. We are Pallas. That's Pallas, PALLAS.io. Yeah, have a read, connect. We can have a chat if you like. I'd love that. And I've literally just written down, Chad, Invisible Women, because
Honestly, it's probably my most recommended book. I have
really,
two. I have one about creativity, and I have that one, and
yeah,
I read that every year. That Invisible Women book. It's fantastic.
that's so great.
Yeah,
And my two of my favorite things, data and women.
yeah, same. Shaye,
Amazing.
this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I really appreciate your different spin and take on personal branding. The reluctant personal brand is an incredible thing to talk about, and I really appreciate your insights, especially muscle memory. Oh my gosh, you've unlocked something in me there. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, and yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you, Chad. And I look forward to your licking the stamp and send it.
Licking the stamp. There we are.
Thanks, Chad.
Well,